Back in the good old days of DOS gaming, our favourite titles ran on specific resolutions on CRT monitors, or television sets if you were fancy. For those unaware, the cathode ray tube was the de facto standard for over 70 years, and is still used commercially to this day. But that's another video for another time. I miss my old CRT. LCDs replaced them, but the pixel clarity of these liquid crystals made the games of old look a lot crisper and not necessarily prettier. Much like how a high-resolution camera can bring out the detail of a human face that was previously hidden. Oh no! The low resolutions that games were forced to run on due to hardware constraints meant if you played them on modern LCD displays, they'd look like a postage stamp. Which isn't ideal, as you'd press your face up against the monitor in order to see what the hell was going on. This is where scalers come in, either from the graphics card or the emulator. The side effect of such scaling is that graphics look much different when blown up to modern standards. And this is why there's such a divergence of opinion on the variety of scalers available in DOSBox. According to its handy wiki, DOSBox scalers reprocess the emulated screen before it's drawn on the physical monitor, and depending on the type of processing, it can provide a slightly updated look or even a stylized look. You'll notice this on my very early videos as I used a different scaler than the standard one. See the difference? If you said, "Hey, that later image looks sharper and more pixelated," then you'd be correct. If you said, "Lawnie, I don't see any difference," then you need to get your eyes tested. It's okay, I can say that. I need to get mine tested too. Good thing I'm not doing any video work that would require great eyesight. If the resolution you're scaling to isn't a multiple of the game's original, there may be an attempt at nearest neighbour interpolation. This can sometimes result in blur, which I've talked about in the past in my aspect ratio video, which you should definitely watch. Different DOS games had different resolutions, and it didn't matter so much, as CRTs could just change the spacing between the lines that they projected. LCDs, on the other hand, have a fixed native resolution of discrete pixels that they can't change. This is why when you switch to a non-native resolution on an LCD, it's a blurry mess. Now, if we work under the assumption that you've got the output on DOSBox correct, and your graphics card is scaling things properly, you might not even need any other scalers. But that's boring. Let's take a look at the software scalers available on the official DOSBox release. Luckily for me, the DOSBox wiki also provides a list of supported scalers. To demonstrate the scalers, we're going to have Doomguy stand about in DOSBox for Linux with an OpenGL output and 4:3 aspect to display the differences between the various scalers, including some live commentary from yours truly about what I'm seeing. Okay, welcome to me looking at the scalers. This is normal, which is the DOSBox default, and as we're looking around with Doomguy, all is well, I guess. He's just gonna stand around and not do much. Now this is different. This is scan. And remember how I was talking about how CRTs would do things via lines? This attempts to bring what are called scan lines into DOSBox. And that is sort of, back in the day if you pressed your face up against a CRT, it would look a little like that. But it's not my favourite. And I think the performance seems a bit smoother. Maybe that's just me. But you'll see, because of the scan lines, things look less pixelated. It's an artistic choice to emulate the CRT. Now if you look at this is TV. So instead of emulating a CRT monitor, this attempts to emulate playing an old game on a TV. And since a TV is a form of CRT, it's pretty similar to scan. Let's just kill these guys. Oh, feeling a bit resilient, were you? And again, it has exactly the same effect. this is similar to Scan, but it's got darkened versions of the data instead of straight black scan lines. Now this is different. This is trying to emulate a dot trio CRT, and you'll see automatically it's not line. There appears to be sort of dots on the screen, and again it's offering that same stylistic effect as the previous two with their scan lines and darkened lines, but in this instance I think it does a better job. It's less obtrusive, you know, rather than straight up lines. I feel like the dots, they mitigate the pixelation. So we're looking at a watercolor now, which makes sense since Doom is art, I guess. This is ADV MAME 3X, and I believe MAME is the Machine Arcade emulator. I can't remember what MAME stands for. Apologies, I'm not a console or arcade person. But yeah, it looks like they've ported that. It's different, especially if you look down at the bar at the bottom. That Doom guy's face, at the reproduction of the text. Look at the textures on that door. Everything has been smoothed out and given a stylistic look. It's like if you'd taken the watercolor effect and used that and painted everything real time. Now you're probably looking at this and thinking, hey, I've seen this before. This is advanced interpolation, which is almost identical to MAME, if not completely identical. I'll leave it to your own discerning eyes to determine if that's the case or not. This is 2x Psi, and you can see a significant blurring. I don't know if that's deliberate or not, or what's going on there, but it's too blurry for my tastes. You know, there are multiple schools of thought as to how to deal with old pixelated games. You can see from a distance there, there's softening on the edges of the marine corpses. This is Super Psi, and it's much like Psi, which I may well be pronouncing wrong, but let's not worry about that. The difference between Psi and Super Psi is apparent already. One is distinctly blurry, and the other is using the same effect, but sharper. It's looking at what Psi did, and is like, right, can we get that any sharper? The answer is yes, and this is the result. It's super. This is Super Eagle. It's like a sort of halfway home between Super Psi and its blurriness, and the advanced MAME interpolation with its stylized graphics. Again, if you look at the bottom bar, you can see the effect it has on the text and so on. It's not as pronounced as the advanced MAME, but it's there. This is high quality 3X, which, as you can see, is a sort of mixture, where it's got the stylized image, but it's also aiming for a sharper picture. It's okay, I've used it in the past, but I always felt it was a little too stylized. If you look at the corpses, they're very smooth and painted. And last but not least, this is none, which means I'm not using any of the DOSBox scalers. This is what Doom looks like by default on my NVIDIA graphics card, using the Linux graphics drivers provided by NVIDIA without any DOSBox scaling, so all the scaling is done on a hardware level by the graphics card itself. Ultimately, it's a matter of opinion and personal taste. Whether you want the pixelated approach, or you want to emulate a CRT effect, or if you'd rather have a stylized version of the graphical output. The default scalers on DOSBox afford you a degree of choice. There's no right or wrong or best way of scaling an image, just the one you prefer the most. And if you enjoyed me rambling on about DOSBox scalers, it turns out that I have hundreds of videos on the channel about all kinds of retro gaming PC stuff from the 70s, 80s and 90s. Feel free to take a look at all my other stuff, And if you like what you see, you can always subscribe. Until next time.